Hello and welcome to another episode of the CG Garage. This is episode number 378, featuring Adam Sidwell, founder of Future House Studios. I've known Adam from way back when, and I hadn't seen him in years and years and years, and I just stumbled upon him at NFTLA and started chatting, and he told me about his new studio, Future House Studios, and all the amazing things he's been doing. Kristen, what did you think of Adam?
Yeah, so as I refer to him as the powerhouse, he has an amazing story. You two started off working on iRobot together, and then he started creating effects for movies, including King Kong, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Warcraft at the beginning. So just a lot there. And then he created Future House Studios, and in 2021, it grew 10 times. So that's amazing in itself. And it's a Metaverse creation company. So he's taken his modular approach to VFX into real time to create AR, VR, and online content. And he's worked with so many different artists and studios, but the cool thing that he does, it's virtual concerts, and one of my favorite artists, he did the Weeknd and Justin Bieber and Kaskade. But for the Weeknd concert, he just explained how they get the viewers to be immersed in the shows, so they got to vote during the concert if Abel the Weeknd was going to lick the frog at the end or not. So that was just cool to learn about that. And then you guys kind of discuss more about the Metaverse, working in real time, and NFTs. So get a lot in this podcast.
Yeah, we do get a lot. Obviously, we talked about our history together in the past and how he's grown. But obviously, like I said, I met him at NFTLA. So he's really interested in the metaverse in a lot of ways and doing some interesting things. And he's got some very interesting thoughts about, how complicated it is to integrate everything into that area. So it was really cool chatting with him. Lots of great stuff in this episode. So you guys should hopefully you guys will get a lot out of it for sure. Okay, we have one event. It's a ways from now, but we have one event that I think we want to give people a heads up on, and that is on February 8th and 9th. What's going on, Kristen?
September 8th and 9th.
September. What did I say? September 8th and 9th. Yes. What's going on?
Yeah. So we have 24 Hours of Chaos. This will be our third edition. It is a series of 12 back-to-back online shows during a 24-hour period. And we're just we unite 3D artists and designers just from all around the world in the arc viz, VFX, animation, gaming, product design, all that. So over the next few months, you'll see us promoting different speakers on the website, but you can go to chaos.com/events to find out more about this event and see all the updates.
Yeah, it's a great event. I absolutely adore it. Like you said, it's 24 hours and we do 12 shows, 2 hours per show as it's traveling around the world. And we usually cover the West Coast show, which is exciting. So I'm excited to try to get some cool speakers for that. And it'll be a lot of fun. So yes, make sure you mark your calendars or put it down as a save the date for September 8th and 9th. Okay, we don't have any other product news, but if people want to know more about the podcast, where can they go, Kristen?
You can go to facebook.com/CG Garage Podcast or chaos.com/CG Garage. And if you'd like to watch us, go to youtube.com/Chaos Group TV.
Perfect. And if you guys have any ideas of other episodes you'd like to have on, or other guests, or you want to make a comment about this one, you can always email us directly, labs@chaos.com. And of course, leave us a review, as she said, as well. So, but for now, please enjoy episode number 378, featuring Adam Sidwell.
Welcome to another CG Garage, where the Chaos Group talks. You'll know it's over when the last bucket drops. We're gonna fire off rays in high dynamic range. We know that ambient occlusion is passé. Global illumination won't lead you astray. And while image-based lighting is really swell, you need to make sure everything has Fresnel.
When was it that we worked together at ED? I mean, it must have been, was it iRobot? We were on iRobot.
I think, yes, iRobot. In fact, iRobot was my first film. And I remember you were doing lighting and rendering, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah,
okay. And you were doing what? You were doing...
I was doing pipeline, some pipeline tools, general, just, hey, we need a Mel script. We weren't even doing Python back then.
Wasn't it Perl still or something?
We had Perl, Mel. It was primarily in Mel because I was writing animation scene setup and animation publishing systems, lighting systems.
Right.
I was writing in Tickle.
That's right.
Which was like a funny thing. Perl. In fact, I wrote a script that there was the scene with there was hundreds of those robots in the factory, and we were having trouble rendering them all at the same time. And so I wrote a Nuke script and a Perl script that like split up the frames and then stitched them together in Nuke, so that they could do sections at a time.
Yes. Yeah, I remember now.
All sorts of things. Whatever script needed to be written, that was, I was tackling that. So, and then a little bit of character rigging, a little bit of VFX, which is really fun. So, I think I worked on some VFX with Steve Galley, and so that was fun. It was good.
Yeah,
good crew.
It was. But so I want to know a little bit about, what led you to, like, we'll that's where we kind of met. This is kind of like the movies where you start in the middle of the story, right? And then you go like, okay, let's go back several years and find out like what was the journey that led you there. And then obviously I want to know what happens after that. So what was the journey that led you to being a visual effects person and sort of doing all of that?
Well, it was funny because I didn't even know what a visual effects person was. I just ended up in the studio working on stuff, and then somebody said, "You're a visual effects person." That's almost how it happens. Like really, like I didn't even know that was a job. I was into drawing and art and coding. Like a lot of us, and I was attending BYU, and they had this animation program. It was just starting because this was like 97, 99, around there. And, and we had just gotten some computers with RenderMan, and we started figuring things out, and we made a short. And this was actually a lot of the DD crew that was on iRobot. Craig Van Dyke, Chris Harvey, Mike Warner, Paul Shaney, like that whole crew was really fun. We all migrated over to DD, but we had made this short together, and we showed it to Vern Wilbert. He was over there, right?
He was a BYU graduate too, right?
He was, exactly. Yeah. So he knew about us and what was going on, and so he said, "Hey guys, what are you up to?" And then we showed him some things, and I remember showing this thing that I had rendered in RenderMan of some lemmings, and it was generated on the fly, like runtime, populating the characters. And so I could handle large crowds, and it was all scripted and set up. And I think I showed it to Darren Grant and Steve Prieg and Eric Miller, and they go, "Okay, cool." And then they kind of pause the phone, put me on hold. They're like, "What do you guys think?" As I imagine what they were saying, and then after that they go, "Hey, do you want a job?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I do." And then I found out like, what the different roles were, right? Because when you're working small together, you're all generalists, and then you find out, there's a thing called a lighter, right? Like that's a role. I didn't even know what that was. And there's a pipeline TD guy, and what was cool about DD in those days, it was still some of DD's loose roots, where it was like this commercial shop, and so people were like hopping back and forth, and there was a lot of that. And so I got to work on a couple different things on the show and do a little bit of rigging and a little bit of the effects and helping out in all sorts of things. I mean, I remember Paul George had me like working on some look dev stuff, and I didn't know how to look dev, so I moved on to something else after that. But that was really fun, and it was exciting, like the opportunities that were there, because it was just early stages of the film.
Right. Yeah, it was. It's interesting. I mean, especially like a lot of those some great people that came out of BYU. I remember that whole Cal. Chris Harvey, he went on to be one of the big shots over at RenderMan, right? He was doing a lot of right. Yeah. So and Laura Leotis, she was also a BYU person. I don't know if you know Laura Lee, and so
she's like head of pipeline at Marvel now or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing. So yeah, it was really kind of interesting, and obviously the school is really didn't. Who's the head of this Pixar, CTO Pixar?
Oh, Ed Catmull.
Ed Catmull, wasn't he a BYU person too?
He wasn't. He was actually a University of Utah person, which is not far away, right? And that's kind of an interesting story, because he was there the origins in the 70s of computer graphics, and I think he invented color mapping, they were calling it at the time, which is texture mapping, and that was his thesis. And then kind of this creative wellspring came out of University of Utah of like these guys that were innovating this stuff. And then he went to Pixar, but then he would come back to BYU and recruit there. And one time he said, "This is the best animation school," and everybody started cheering, and they loved it. And that was they brought a lot of recruits out there. And I think it was working well because they tried to simulate a production environment as close as possible. Like, here's one project, you're all working on it, you're trying to plug into the different roles, and you're trying to complete it on time. And it was pretty good at simulating that. And so then, courses are leading up to your senior year where you're going to work on that project, trying to prep you for that. Yep. So, and that evolved, right? Like when we were there, it was a bunch of guys in rooms with the computers, and we're like, "Well, so what do you want to do?" "I don't know. What do you want to do? Let's make a short." That's kind of how it was. And now it's a more rigorous process of like, portfolio review, and there's only 25 students a year, and so all sorts of those things. But
yeah, for sure. It's interesting. I've always sort of thought about that school, and actually I've been thinking about Utah a lot in general with computer graphics. I mean, Viewpoint was a big company there at one point, and but even just the Utah teapot, like is
right, exactly.
Right. So it's a really sort of an important thing. I think there's even I think the Utah teapot is in a museum somewhere.
Is it? I want to find that. I want to go see that. I
think it's somewhere in the Bay Area. I think there's a computer graphics museum in the Bay Area. And I
really?
Think yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. That's pretty cool. Well, it's interesting to see how it's evolved too, because for a long time, if you wanted to work in computer graphics, you went to LA, right? And that's still the case. But then now, since then, there's been kind of a small ecosystem forming here. Epic Games is actually a big thing here because they have a branch here, and it was called Chair, and a couple of guys actually out of BYU that I've worked with and have known and great friends started that up, and then Epic bought them, and Donald Mustard was one of those guys. Now he's like chief creative officer of Epic, and so that's kind of interesting that it has like roots here.
Interesting,
or is absorbed. Epic is absorbed part of that, and you have things like The Void coming out of here for location-based entertainment, and then there's Warner Brothers Avalanche that used to be Disney Avalanche that did a lot of game stuff, and then Wildworks, which did Animal Jam and has been really busy on a lot of things, and then and now you have Future House Studios.
Yeah,
but if I can throw the name in there with the
of course you can, and I will definitely want to. We'll lead up to the origins of that amazing thing and what you're trying to do. But so let's just go quickly back to iRobot. You were finishing iRobot. That was your first feature film. Obviously, that's where you and I met. Did you go on to Stealth as well?
I didn't. I think what happened was I went to Weta after that.
Oh, nice!
And that was actually a really great move. So I'd worked with Steve Krieg. I don't know if you remember Steve.
Yeah, of course.
He's was a character lead, and now has gone on to do some pretty cool stuff. He's accepted his Academy Award on stage, which was pretty cool. For Benjamin Button, and then Steve said, "Hey, there's a job over here. You should try this." And I said, "Oh yeah, I want to go to Weta. That sounds awesome." So I went to Weta, and then
were you working on King Kong or
King Kong? Yeah. And Weta is so fun. It's so fun. Like I know it's probably changed a lot in the last 15 years since I've been there, but it was so cool because it was just like it felt so much like DD, right? Like this rough and tumble warehouse. You're all in there, and Weta is like always adding another warehouse. It feels like and you're just kind of there in this nondescript place, and you had to drive to dailies because the creature department was in a different place, and you would drive all the way over to this creature department was in a place called Rongotai, and it was another neighborhood, and you drive a couple miles to get to Manuka, where they had the thing where you sit down and hear Joe Letteri's notes, right? And that was really fun because the creature department was pretty big at the time. I think there was 23. It was pretty big for, most shops, because a lot of shops, this was early stages, right? Like there wasn't as much creature work being done in the industry because it was still like being solved. And like Lord of the Rings really pushed that forward. Gollum, King Kong pushed it forward. And I think what we did on iRobot was pretty awesome. That was I feel like was one of the big first character shows for DD.
I think it was. Yeah. Yes. Possibly.
I think there was probably some before that, but I remember that was the talk. Like, oh, this is a big character thing that we're doing. Mm-hmm. So I was at Weta for a year, and then I came back. I did some things at DD and Sony and ILM. ILM's really fun, of course.
Okay.
But
how long were you at Weta, you said?
For about a year, over a year. Yeah.
Okay.
So over a year. I kind of was the wandering CG minstrel, like
yep.
I know a lot of people do that. They go from movie to movie, from place to place.
Sure.
But that was actually intentional, because I felt like there was so much to learn out there and so much to discover. And, being an early, mid-20s guy, I was just so excited to see the world and go find out what was out there. And every new place was an exciting new adventure. And so I ran the gamut. I did Sony, I did ILM, I did, Weta, even a couple of places like Asylum, Murata.
Yeah.
I think that's MPC. I did a little stint at MPC, did a commercial there.
Wow.
And I think what was cool is it's funny, this, that you end up working with all the same people anyway, and you can't even remember sometimes where you worked with that person. But you're just, you're at one studio 1 year with them, and then you're at another studio the next year working with the same person. And it's so fun because it's kind of this group, this network of friends and people that you like working with, and their capabilities, you can trust them to get things done. And there's just cool like trust factor that occurs when you've worked on shows together that, okay, that guy gets it. He knows what it's like being in the trenches. He knows how to deliver. And that's something that I think you take with you, right? Is this ability to finish the hard task and solve the hard problem and make it look good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what were you doing most of those? Were you still being a TD at most of those places? Were you still making tools or were you starting to do other things as well?
So I migrated from tools over to character work at Weta, and that was great. And so I started to focus on character work, but it was always with like a backup of like, hey, I know how to do this with tools. You have different kinds of character TDs, some that are coders and some that aren't. I was getting into the API a little bit of like coding things and figuring out how that works with Maya, but then also I had this really fun problem, and this was early stages, right, of like building like 36 unique cars for King Kong, right? The New York sequence, King Kong storming through there, and they're all old timey, 1920s, 1930s cars, and so they modeled them out, and it was just really fun to come up with scripts that would auto build everything if you wanted to update like how the wheels worked, right? And then you push a button and it updates everything, and that was always fun to do, right? Like I love thinking in that modular sense. I love thinking in like, how can we scale this? How can we repeat it? And that was fun because, oh, wait, I want to add suspension. Boom, add this to all the cars. So, and that was really interesting because it was like the beginning of modular thinking in character work. Mm-hmm. Not that I started that, but that was in the early stages. And I see it now where, ILM has developed a lot of tools, and I've talked to people as they were developing their rigging systems. And you just see so many like auto riggers out there, right? Of like, you just lay out the joint, boop, 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 press the button and it goes. It practically skins it and does everything for you, right?
Right.
So it's really cool that the tool sets have come that far so that you can work on the other things that matter most.
Right.
And so, and then additionally, right, it's gone further to like modular systems for simulating the skin, the muscles, the fascia and the tissue for characters. And you saw, we did a lot of that simulation at ILM on Warcraft and Ninja Turtles and Pirates of the Caribbean. So we did a lot of sim work at those places. and figuring those things out. And it's fun to see that evolve too, because when I was back at Weta, started working with a guy named James Jacobs, and James is just really smart creature TD. And he was developing on Avatar a lot of these concepts with some other TDs about how to run these muscle sims, how to make these things more realistic. And if you can see an Avatar, like, you can kind of see how certain parts of the movie, the characters look so much better than other parts, right? Because that was a long movie and that process developed. But those learnings really started to sink into everybody's head as the years went by. And then James actually went and developed something called Ziva Dynamics, which is super cool. And that's a standalone product that does realistic muscle sim and tissue simming, and is just characters making the sims very real. And it's super impressive. You look at it and you say, oh, wow, is that a real tiger? Right. And everything works really well. And now that's gone into real time, and they've adapted it to real time. And now that's a big part of Unity. In fact, I think Unity acquired Ziva.
What? Yeah. Well, did they acquire it with the acquisition of Weta? Because they've acquired.
I think they acquired it before that, actually.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And that, we should talk about that acquisition of Weta. That's so fascinating to think about that and where that's going.
We're going to get to that. Don't worry.
Okay, good. Okay. I'm so glad we're talking about that. So
yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, that's really cool. So you're, doing a lot of character work, et cetera, et cetera. And then when did things start to change? When did you decide, hey, I'm going to make my own studio? Like, what led you to that situation?
Okay. So I guess I should back up a little bit, because this is important. So character work, and then transitioned into real time.
You transitioned to real time
5 years ago. Yeah. Started doing VR work. VR was so interesting to me because it almost felt like, I know this is kind of crazy to say, but we had solved a lot of the problems in offline rendering, like films. I mean, I know there's still plenty of problems to solve, but going back in history before, when you remember when, like, we still didn't know how to do water, we still didn't know how to do fire, we still didn't know how to do faces. And of course, there's still problems to solve there, but like, we're so much further ahead in the last 15 years. I mean, all those things, it's like, oh yeah, that's easy. It's now just push a button,
Right.
And so
remember how long we used to struggle just to do global illumination, and now it's just like a no-brainer.
Yes, exactly. Like those kinds of things. It was like the fact that we even should have global illumination, right? It was like, this guy wrote this paper about GI. Have you heard of it? And then like, oh, that's really cool. And then you'd
have all these hacks like ambient occlusion and all this other stuff just to try to make it look kind of like what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, I remember those things.
Right. Mm-hmm. And especially because you're a rendering guy, like you've seen that go through and change. So that was, I mean, the systems have evolved so well, and everybody's like, it's so fun because everyone's rallied together. They've made these tools. It's a lot easier now, but then they can spend their time on the newer problems, right? Mm-hmm. So that was fun to transition over to VR and real time to solve some of those problems. I was really fascinated, especially as a creature guy and a VFX guy, with augmented reality, right? Because we spend all of our time creating real photorealistic creatures and environments to put into the real world in a film. In AR, we're doing it in real time, and that's cool. Now, of course, it doesn't look nearly as advanced at this point, and it's kind of, it's Pokemon, right?
Right.
But the idea, when I first saw, it was like a Vuforia demo, and I started playing with that, and I got that to work, and I put this little character, and it popped up on my desktop. He's moving around, and I'm looking through my phone, and I'm like, this is amazing. I can't believe it. I can actually put VFX in real time in my real world, and I can put it wherever I want,
Right.
How is this tracking in real time, right? And so it was just very mind blowing. And so I've had fun delving into the real time aspect. And I think that's been critical, because then after doing the real time for a while, there was another studio that started up here in Utah. And I moved out of LA a couple years back. And then there's a studio that started up here. It was called Deep Root, and we were making game cinematics for pinball machines, which was really fascinating. Someone had a lot of funding. Came in, we built this studio. There was like 45 of us. It built up a 3D department, got to work with some really cool people. And they ran into funding issues. And ultimately what happened was they were running into funding issues. The pay had dried up. We'd done it for a couple of years. We were making some really cool stuff. We'd hired people from ILM and Pixar and all sorts of like really great talent. There's just, there wasn't the money left. And I talked to the owner and I said, hey, a client came to me and said, hey, we want you to do this real time work for virtual concerts. And, I said, okay, well, that sounds awesome. It's like, you got a team, right? And I'm like, yes, I do. And I did, because we had all these people who were losing their jobs from the previous studio. And I said, guys, let's go do this. They've approached me and I signed contracts with them. And then I went to the owner of the company that everybody was getting laid off from. I said, hey, you don't have the money to carry all these people on staff, but if you want, we'll continue making these game cinematics for you. And you just contract with Future House Studios. Okay. And he said, yeah, that's a great idea. Right. And I was like, great, we have 2 clients, let's go. And so, hired a couple people, worked on some things. That was 2 years ago. In fact, we just hit our 2-year anniversary 4 days ago. So that's pretty fun. And, it was a couple people and we were just trying to like keep people busy, but we started working with Wave, and they are, they're awesome. They're doing, virtual concerts and virtual entertainment in a new way that's innovative. And they have this cool platform. They're reaching out with all the best artists. They're working with, Time Warner Music Group. And so, and I think they have a bunch of investors that are actually the artists. Some of these big time artists are investing in them. So, so we started working on a John Legend show and then a Weeknd show. He did the halftime Super Bowl. He's just huge, great music. It's really fun. And that show was really great and interesting. And I loved it because they broke the idea of like, here's somebody on a stage, but here's more like this music video where the camera's doing interesting things. You're playing with scale. You're playing with like visual elements in a weird way. And then we moved on to do just, a lot of pipeline, additional support work, did a lot on the Justin Bieber concert. And so we ramped up for that. We had, 20 artists working on that. And so it's been really busy and we've added new clients since then. And so we've augmented our team and we've been to as high as having 52 people on the payroll at one time. So, it's
not a small company, buddy.
Not a small company, right? And ramp up and ramp down as necessary, right? And so, sure, like all the effect studios and the studios do. But right now, we're probably 25 to 35 about working on projects and contractors, and we expect that we're getting into our busy period that will probably be needing to ramp up more soon. And I think one of the things that was really important to me is that I said, okay, if I'm going to start a studio, I'm going to make sure I can hire like all those, the great people that I've worked with in the past. And so I've, working with some people from Digital Domain, from ILM, from other places. And it's been awesome because, like I said, there's that element of trust, right? Like, that you've been through these things, these hard projects together, and that people will do what it takes to get it done. And there's a certain element of trust there. And so we're moving forward and we're doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really cool. I mean, I've always find it, interesting how people start studios and what's the thing that started it, right? And you're not the first person that started a studio because another studio was collapsing, which is interesting. I think it was it the guy from Axis Animation? I think he might have been in a similar boat, which is interesting. But okay, so just for the listeners, everyone's like, okay, what is a virtual concert or what is this concert? So explain, like, give me an example. Take one of those performances, whichever favorite one it is, and tell us what you'd expect to see or what you guys are doing for enhancing these experiences.
Yeah. So let me use a couple of examples. Let's take Justin Bieber. That was one of Wave's biggest concerts, and we supported them a lot on that. they have this really cool platform where Bieber, Justin, he's like motion captured live.
Okay.
And he's performing and he's driving his avatar in the virtual world. And so you can log on from your phone or from your web browser to be in this concert. And then you can interact with the concert. Like there's a point where it says, send Justin some love. And he's got like this health meter and you tap on this heart and it sends it and you see it send it through the concert. And then you see names of users appear over the heads of some of the crowd characters and other people. And you're in this city environment. And it's super cool because you're affecting the outcome. There's one point where it says send Justin some light, like charge him up. And you do, and then he starts glowing and like these effects come off of him. It's really cool because everybody's participating. There was a moment in the Weeknd where you can vote whether he licks the frog or not. He has this thing, he licks the frog. It's almost like the Ozzy Osbourne biting the bat head off. Right. But he licks the frog in one of his videos. It's super gross. And everyone's like, oh, that's so weird. But you can vote whether he does that or not. Right. And so that's really cool. And then another cool thing that Wave did with the Justin was they had people on their webcams in this tiles behind him. And he's talking to them and they're reacting in real time. And so that's just such a cool thing because it connects people and makes them feel part of the concert. It actually makes the concert feel more intimate than if you're at a stadium with 30,000 people. Mm-hmm. But it also makes the concert much more scalable. I mean, because you can have millions. I mean, millions of people have seen this thing. And that's really interesting. We did one with a company called Future Fest that had a Kaskade concert. Kaskade is this enormously successful, famous EDM artist. Excuse me. And you were like robots. Your avatar was like a robot and you were hopping around platforms. And it was also almost like this game inside a pinball machine. It goes back to our pinball roots, but these characters are hopping around inside this pinball machine as the concert goes on and they're interacting. And then the ticket is an NFT and there's various drops that occur. And so you're seeing that it's almost like you can make a game out of the concert and have a way for people to participate and affect the outcome.
Right. It's interesting. I mean, I remember when my son, when he was playing Fortnite and seeing Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, right? And that was like, you just said make a game out of a concert, but they made a concert out of a game. So
yes,
like,
yes. And that thing was amazing, right?
It was like, what? It was the trippiest thing. And it was just, what is going on? And it was fun. It was fun. And it was short, it was like, you had to be there for the window of opportunity. And that was kind of awesome for sure.
Yeah. I love what they did with playing with the sense of scale and the environments in that concert.
Yeah. And then people can they don't have to be in a stadium, right? They can sort of be anywhere and do anything and do all that kind of stuff. So that's really cool. So your interest in real-time technology sort of came out of the VR world, I'm assuming, right? Mm-hmm. That sort of started it. Okay.
Right.
So what were some of the challenges that you think you had, like, going into real time? Like, what were some of the things that's like, obviously the advantage is that it's real time, but what were some of the challenges that you had with real time?
Well, it's funny, Chris, because I remember getting my first job in real time, and it's so different from getting your job in VFX, where everybody knows you and they just say, "Oh, come on over. Oh, you do this thing. Okay, get over here." Like you're hired within like an hour, right?
Right.
Yeah. In real time, it was a whole new set of people. And I almost had to convince them to give me this job. And it was like one of the hardest jobs I had to get. But then I'm saying all this because once I got there, it was like, well, guys, this is computer graphics. It's all the same, and it's 3D, right? Like there's so many similarities.
Right.
Especially from the point of view of I was taking on the role as an animation director and character director. So it was animating, I wrote some pipeline tools to go from Maya into Unity, made sure that, you're dealing with the blending there, right? Like that's a fun problem to solve, is that you have these animation cycles that need to blend into each other and you really need to plan them out as opposed to doing just one long shot, right? Where it's just
Right.
going to do something and doesn't blend. And so that real-time aspect is very interesting, and a cool way to think about that problem from an animation perspective was really fun to do, and start to, wrap your head around that initially. And so, you master that, but then you have the problem from the asset perspective of I only get so many polygons and so many bones. And that's a huge challenge, right? Like,
Yeah.
you want to render this top quality, amazing photorealistic thing, but then you just kind of have to redesign things to fit with the software and hardware. I mean, I feel like I'm making Atari games in the late or the early 90s,
Right.
oh, well, you only get so many pixels you can use. Right.
Right.
And so that is a huge challenge. And I know that as people look at the metaverse and they go, oh, this metaverse, why would I want to play a game that looks like it's 1994? And I'm like, yeah, you have a good point. Right. But
Right.
it's because we're trying to solve new problems. And I think that it will get there as hardware increases and, the algorithms get better. The chips get better. It's going to get there. From the rendering perspective, there's a lot of rendering issues, right? Like, especially in VR, because you're doing two eyes. I mean, I love rendering in Unreal when you can take 3 seconds a frame. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, right? When you're taking it from an offline perspective, but when you're supposed to be doing 120 FPS in VR or 90 FPS, and that's your target.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, if you could do it like an offline Unreal render, and you could take 3 seconds, it's absolutely fun, right?
Right.
So that's not the problem, but the problem is when you're rendering two eyes in VR in real time, it just reduces the amount of fidelity you can make. And I know some artists who get very frustrated and they just don't want to work with it because they feel hampered, they feel like handicapped by those limitations.
Right. What about in general? Like, there are real-time experiences where the fidelity of what it looks like is not as important, right, as the interaction or the other things that are going on. So a lot of people seem to be very forgiving of, I don't want to say crappy looking games, but because they're fun games, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. And so that's almost the same thing in movies. Like, it doesn't matter how good the dinosaurs look in Jurassic Park if the story sucks, it sucks.
Right. Well, that's a good point, right? Like, you can swap out story and writing for game mechanics and writing,
Yep.
right? If you have those, then people are forgiving. And that's what's been fun about VR is, like, there's some ridiculous experiences out there, right? That
Sure.
you get in there and there's absolutely, no great graphics about it. It's just like moving spheres or weird things that are working, and it doesn't matter because it's fun, right? And
Right.
you don't care, and so that's really cool. And especially, what I love is that we're kind of growing past this, but the awe of someone being in a VR headset for the first time. I love that. I love being with somebody when I'm putting on the VR headset for the first time and they go, whoa, and they look around. It's the simplest world, but the reality that is being projected upon you feels so real. It's very cool.
Right. Yeah. I get it. I totally get it. Okay. So that's cool. So your studio started 2 years ago, right?
Uh-huh.
And you've been working on virtual concerts. Any other kind of projects you've been working on?
Yeah, a lot. So we do a lot of game projects.
Okay.
Game companies will come to us, whether it's mobile or other platforms, asking us to do modeling, animation, character rigging, VFX, lighting, tech art, engineering.
Okay.
That's been a steady stream of clients. Interestingly enough, a lot of people come to us for metaverse applications. And,
okay. Let's get into that.
Yeah. When I say that word, it's like, metaverse, what does that even mean? Is that even a real thing? Right.
Yeah.
And all metaverses is it's VR with a couple stipulations, right? Or it's not even VR. It's just, we're all getting together in this world together. Right. And
okay.
It's funny because after Mark Zuckerberg made the announcement and they changed the name to Meta and they talked about putting, $10 billion toward building the metaverse, it finally gave us a word to be able to use that other people would understand outside of the industry for the thing that we'd already been doing for the last 5 years.
Right.
So we've been making the metaverse since before it was cool.
Right.
That was real time, right? Like the real time experiences that we're making, that was Metaverse. Those were Metaverse applications. So now we have a lot of people coming to us saying, hey, I've got my corporation of 500 employees and I want them to get together. This especially happened during COVID. They haven't seen each other in a year or 2 years. Let's get them together. Can you build a special world and have everybody come in there and interact? We've done that. And it's been awesome to see because everyone's like laughing their heads off. They're like loving it. They're playing games. They're being silly. They're dancing. They're interacting in a way because for them, it's the first time they've been in a VR headset. Or you might be going in from a browser, but it gives you a feeling of like, hey, I'm kind of there with somebody in a way more than Zoom does too, because there's so many subtle cues. We're like on a Zoom right now, right? It's 2D. I see a picture. You're high fidelity. Right. But there's something about when you're in VR and you can sense that someone is 2 or 3 feet behind you. We have all these different signals that our bodies use, like hearing, the back of our hairs, the hair on the back of our neck stands up and we feel like, oh, there's somebody over there. Right. And we like that, right? We like to be around people and proximity counts, right? Like, personal space. That's why that's such a big deal with us. Hey, you're too close, man. Or, bring it in for a hug, right? Like VR has those kinds of cues that you can enjoy with each other that you can't on like a flat 2D face-to-face video chat.
Right.
And so that's why people have come to us about, hey, let's make this metaverse so we could bring people together. So it's actually funny. We're actually working on one right now that we're putting former President George W. Bush in there to address some people. And then George Clooney's showing up too. So it's like,
that's so interesting.
Isn't that interesting? The two Georges, right? Like what a pair, right? And so now we've helped to put, Justin Bieber, The Weeknd, Sonic the Hedgehog, John Legend, and George W. Bush all in the metaverse. And that's kind of a fun lineup, I want them to all get together. So
Yeah. Well, we should mention to people that the reason you and I reconnected is that I totally randomly ran into you at NFTLA. I saw you sort of wandering the halls of LA Convention Center, and I was like, oh my God. And so anyway, we reconnected there. So what was your interest in NFTLA? Like, what were you there checking out?
Well, so the blockchain and decentralization is very interesting to so many people, and there's been such a conversation surrounding it. I wanted to go and find out more about it and understand, kind of absorb the zeitgeist and see what was there. A lot of people are using NFTs for ticketing. That was part of Future Fest.
Interesting.
That was, you bought a ticket and it was an NFT, but then that's connected to your wallet and it's connected to you. And so they can send you new things, and that's pretty cool. That was the same with Wave did that with the show for Teflon Sega. And there was a ticket NFT that you got if you attended the show. And it's pretty cool looking, really cool looking, piece of art. Right. And so that's a big thing. And then we also were researching doing our own NFT collection, because we've had a number of NFT collections come to us and we've created the art for them.
Okay.
And it's actually a really fun problem to solve, the generative art, because you're getting these modular pieces and they switch in and out and you build this thing. And it's really fun because you don't know what's going to come of it, right? Like you plan it out, but then you randomly inserting pieces and then you get something really cool. So I love that aspect of it. And so we're looking at our own NFT collection. Of course, like, a week ago, the market fell out on NFTs and, it bottomed out and they lost 93% of their value. I think they'll be back in some form or another. And I don't know when, but we would really like to build on that, because I love the idea of the community that it builds. People getting together, they rally around this one thing, you buy this thing, and then you get to talk to each other about these things that you love that are adjacent and connected. Right. So we have, some communities that we're building that we really want to have this be a part of. So that's that's our interest in NFTs. And I think that as people come to us to build more of them, it's fun to be in the space and understand the space.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Obviously a lot of people are very skeptical of crypto, and there are people who are saying, I told you so with the crash or whatever, which is fine. But, my response to that is people said exactly the same thing about the internet in 2001.
Right.
I think we're still using the internet today. So
we are
probably more than ever. And so I'm not necessarily saying that it's going to go one way or another. And I do believe that digital goods and the idea of the metaverse itself is going to be important. You're building metaverses, right? Which is a great thing. And I think that that exchanging goods in the metaverse is going to be something that takes place. And I think that people are going to buy those things. And they have to have a good common system for it to work, that's trustworthy, then it'll work, right? So absolutely.
Well, and Chris, if for those out there who are still skeptical about NFTs and digital goods, think about hipsters. And I say this because
that's a good way to put it.
Think about hipsters.
I like that quote. For those of you who are skeptical about NFTs, think about hipsters.
And I say this because, right, like I remember you got the rise of tech, right? And this is like 2007, around that time, when you have everyone's saturated with iPhones and all these things, and
right.
like, oh wow, these are all so cool. It's inundated our lives. And I remember working in San Francisco. I was actually at ILM, and I saw this hipster, this younger kid, and he's on the bus, and he's got like this wooden board game on his lap. Okay. And he's going to his friend's house to play board game with this like ancient looking antique board game. Sure. And I was like, what's going on here? Like nobody likes board games. That's like old, right? But I think what people were looking at is they said, we're in an era of infinitely duplicatable digital goods. I want something rare and I want something special. And so the rise of, all this retro stuff, vinyl is back, right? You're playing vinyl records. So digital goods, when you attach a rarity to them and you can verify that rarity, it means something, right? Like, I'm the only one who has this cool avatar or this cool t-shirt or this cool hat or this cool digital pair of shoes. And when I'm showing, it's like when you show up at the party and somebody's like, where'd you get that shirt? I've never seen anything like it. It's so cool. Right. And then if somebody else shows up with the shirt 5 minutes later, it's no fun. Right. So that's NFTs, right? You're the only one with the shirt.
Yeah. I think the challenge is that the thing that I think is interesting is the how is it going to work with all the walled gardens, right?
Yes.
Like, because if I have a really cool NFT and I want to play Fortnite, why can't I bring my avatar into Fortnite, right?
Yeah.
Because you can only use the avatars that Fortnite supplies for you. You have to buy from them, but a lot of people can buy the banana suit one, right? So I want to have my own. So I think what's interesting, and then this is a metaverse problem that solved, is the open standard problem. So like people can do that. So what's your thoughts on that?
They're absolutely okay. So there has to be an open standard because everybody's trying to make their walled gardens. You've got the Meta garden, you've got the Microsoft garden, you've got the Epic Fortnite garden. You got everybody's trying to make these gardens, and it's walls, and there's like, soldiers pouring boiling oil at you if you try to break through the wall. But some people, and I know Epic is I think moving in this direction, are looking at how can we be interoperable, because the metaverse is really going to be really, really fun when it's interoperable and I can walk from one garden to another. I'm in the same avatar and the NFTs have verified it and its system's working. That's what's fun to me. And I think that's going to be fun to everybody else. But I think that's only going to work when there's an economic incentive for people to open up their the doors into and let people through the walls. And I think that's going to happen. If any brands are out there listening, come to us. and we're going to build you a metaverse. And once we've built a lot of these metaverses and they're all interconnected, we're going to have a James Holiday Easter egg hunt through the metaverses for $1 million. And then you're going to want to be part of that metaverse, right? You're going to want to be part of that. You're going to want it so that people are given a reason to come find the key in your metaverse, and it has to be connected to everything else. And that's when it's going to be really fun.
I really hope so. I think that's going to be the key. And I think that decentralization, or Web3 in general, I think is going to be the key for that to happen, right? And the only way that's going to happen is if you create open standards for people to use.
Absolutely. And I think Material X is one of those standards.
USD as well, I think.
USD, right? Yeah. Yes, definitely. And if we can create that creates that right standard for characters and all those other parts of it, like then we're going to be in a good spot. And Chris, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because whenever I hear a metaverse panel and somebody gets up there and like, we're just going to walk in from Fortnite into Meta, I'm like, wait, no. I'm like, that's my job to make that happen, and that's hard. We're only going to be able to do that if they allow it to happen, right? And so I want to like run up on stage and be like, wait, stop. We make this stuff. Let me tell you how it's going to work, right?
Yeah,
so,
I know.
Yeah, the open standard.
You think Apple is going to want to have everyone, like Apple is not going to put iMessage on Android. Let's just put it that way. It's the same.
There you go. There you go.
Because otherwise they'll lose a whole bunch of customers, right? So they've got the lock-in because they've got iMessage on iPhone, and they will never put it on Android, because then it would take that disadvantage away. Anyway, really fascinating. Now let's talk about game engines. Your thoughts on the game engines themselves. Like, they've been tackling this. Obviously, Epic has a very strategic goal that they're doing, right? They have gone all in on the beyond games technology, right? It's not Unreal is not just for games, it's for virtual production, it's for concerts, it's for metaverse experiences, et cetera, et cetera. So Unity obviously has been doing this as well. And so what is your thoughts about, like, to me, it seemed very obvious why they acquired Weta, but what's your thoughts on that whole thing?
Yeah, I think I've been trying to figure that out. Like, to me, it seems like a brilliant acquisition.
Sure.
But what does that mean? Like, are we going to try to jam all of the learnings of Weta in the VFX world into Unity? Because that's just not going to fit right away. But if we're asking all of those brilliant minds to then develop Unity further to do all of these amazing things, and that makes absolute sense, right? The technology is not all compatible. Some of it will be, but the minds, let's get them in there and let's do this. Is Weta going to start making visual effects films in Unity? That would be cool, right?
Yeah,
that would be really cool. But I think it's more about, like, let's get Unity super photoreal, and let's get Unity doing all these amazing things. There was the Enemies, I think it's called Enemies, the demo that Unity just did.
Oh, with the digital human stuff.
Digital humans, and this architecture was like unfolding. It was beautiful. It was really amazing. So,
yeah, for sure. Well, okay. I think it's fascinating. I think that what those guys are doing and their goals in there, and obviously, Epic has hired a lot of people I know now work at Epic. Right. So obviously, they're doing the same thing. They just didn't buy an entire company, but they've acquired a huge amount of people that work there. And the real-time experience is good. The thing that always bothers me, and I know I'm very biased about this stuff, but the thing that always bothered me about the real-time experience is that I feel like we're back in the iRobot days, where we're still having to hack a bunch of stuff to make it look good.
I know. Yes. And you want to get past that, because at the end you get that adrenaline rush from just a good looking picture, Right. And that is frustrating. And I know some people who just won't do real time because of it. And I understand that.
Right.
So hopefully this Weta acquisition can just help fuse.
Well, honestly, I think it's going to be ray tracing. Once they get real ray tracing in real time, which Chaos is working on. Obviously, we've been doing a pretty good job on with Vantage, but I think that's what's going to change it, because I just, like, It was funny because I've been doing a little bit of things in real time and Unreal to sort of learn that experience and doing some virtual production. And I said, oh my God, I promised myself I would never render a shadow map again in 2006. And here I are still doing rendering shadow maps. So it's interesting. Okay. So you've got some really great ideas about the metaverse. What's your thoughts? I mean, where do you think it's going to go in the next, 5 years or whatever?
Well, I think that it's going to go to interoperability. I hope that it's going to go to interoperability. We're going to do everything we can to make that available for people. I don't think that we're all going to be sitting in VR headsets 24/7. Everybody's kind of worried about that, but I think that just viscerally, there's an instinct inside us that says, I can only do VR for 30 minutes or tops, maybe an hour. And then you just kind of feel like you want to get out of it. Now that can change as the form factors get slimmer and more comfortable. But I think, and also as VR becomes more physical, right? Because then you're enjoying that physicality of action and movement. So, what I see is the interconnectedness of so many things. The real world metaverse, some of the things that are happening. We're doing a lot of fun things with Niantic and their Lightship platform.
Interesting.
And they're setting out to build the real world metaverse. And I think as you see that tying into VR or just accessing it from your phone, or accessing it from your web browser or your console, I'd love to see all those things connected so that as we traverse our real world, we can find interesting insertion points to this metaverse, and not in a way that, it's there if you want it, but not obtrusive. I think that's important. Like, you can always take your glasses off.
You're right.
That's what I think is going to be key. But I would love to see us traversing through all of those places and melding them. And we have some things in the works, moving in that direction. Some internal projects that we're having development. Probably too early to say much about it yet, but maybe in a subsequent show we'll be able to talk more about it as we're further along. So, all
right. Well, cool. So let's get a little bit into what kind of projects. Obviously you mentioned the concerts, but what other things can people check out? Like, are there things that people can get in VR right now that can check out some of the work that you guys are doing, or any other things that people should experience some of the things that you guys have done? Let's do that.
Well, so you can always go to futurehousestudios.com and see our reel and some of the things that we're building. Go check out a lot of the Wave things. I think it's wave.watch. Wave has their amazing platform. They've built out all these things. You can see some of our work that we've contributed there. And it allows you to, you can experience the next concert. You can go to see recordings of those concerts, like Justin Bieber. There's a Steve Aoki Sonic the Hedgehog concert that we did for Supersphere. And that one is on YouTube. You can view it in VR. So that's
Steve Aoki is really into NFTs and into the
He's cool dude, right? Like, very interesting how it melds with this digital music arena which he's playing in. Mm-hmm. Go check us out on LinkedIn. Come add me on LinkedIn. We post a lot of stuff that we're working on. We just did a really cool 2D Dungeons and Dragons trailer for the Neverwinter game. For Gearbox, and then also did a 3D trailer, back in the fall. So definitely follow us on LinkedIn to see the kinds of things that we're doing. We post pretty regularly about some cool stuff, and then you can see some of the AR demos that we've worked on in Lightship. Lightship and Eighth Wall. There's a lot of web AR happening that we're diving into further, and a lot of these Lightship demos which show some of the applications that you can do in augmented reality, which are really fun. And we have people hiring us all the time to build out those kinds of experiences. And that's big in marketing. People are creating a lot of experiences in AR there. You can see some of our work on the documentary Waterman. We did some animation for Waterman. That's a fun one about Duke Kahanamoku, the famous Hawaiian surfer and swimmer. So there's those things to check out. And then we'll be having some game cinematics and some games coming out. We actually have a big AAA game that we worked on coming out soon, but that's our publisher, I think, is going to announce it maybe in the next month or so. So that's an exciting one, a location-based experience that I think is going to be very, very cool. And we love the IP. It's one of our favorites, and very, very famous IP. So we hope to be able to talk about that in about a month or so.
Okay. You have been extremely busy in 2 years.
We've been very busy. Yeah. We've been very busy.
That is a lot of work in 2 years. That's amazing.
And some of it we can't even talk about, right?
Right.
And hopefully we'll be able to announce it at some time. But there's been quite a need for content, and we're having a lot of fun with it. So
you guys are based in Utah, right? So
we're based in Utah, but we're all over the world. So we're hiring people from Los Angeles to New York to Toronto to Brazil to Hungary.
Okay.
We've even had people in Japan. So
yeah, how is the for 2 years? I mean, you started your studio right at the beginning of the pandemic. It sounds like, right?
Right. Yeah.
So how has that worked out for you? Just sort of remote work and all of that sort of
actually really great, really great. When you're starting a studio, you have to be super conscious of an overhead. Right. And so,
of course,
we finally got an office in January, and this is the office, right?
Right.
It's very small, but it houses our render farm and our servers, and, so people can remote in or come by, but mostly people are working from home. There's a core group that works here. But people are just working from all over the place on their home machines. And, we remote in, and we have Zooms and Slacks, and it allows us to work with anybody. And we love that. We can work with talent from anywhere. And a lot of people want that. They want to go move to Tennessee or Texas, and it's fun.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I think it's really cool what you're doing, and definitely going to follow up on some of these things. And I encourage people to go check out Future House Studios and the cool work that they're doing, because it's a lot of fun. And it was so amazing to run into you. I was like,
I'm so glad I saw you, Chris.
I know.
That was
I was
really
like,
cool.
I know that guy. I know. Holy
really
shit!
cool.
I work. Yeah. And so it's kind of interesting to do that. I think it's great. I'm really, really, really impressed, and congratulations on getting this thing going and doing the amazing work you're doing.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, Chris. Thanks for having me on the show today. This has been fantastic.